So the World Series has been decided. Free agency starts in just a few days here. Trade's already underway. So much to talk about. And we're super excited to be joined by today's guest, our beat writer for the Great Lake Loons, high A affiliate of the LA Dodgers, and Blue Jays prospect writer for Jays Prospects, Brian Crawford. Welcome to the Walk-Off, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, buddy. Baseball season officially over.
Yeah.
You still writing and reporting over the off season?
I set up interviews whenever I can, whether I can able to set up some phone interviews, email interviews, whatever I can do.
That's right. But you're a little bit slower going into the off season, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it can be a little bit slower. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to get the players during the season.
Of course. Let's start with the World Series.
Right.
Okay, a series that I think it's safe to say turned out to be much more entertaining and a lot closer than maybe a lot of us expected it would be. What were your biggest takeaways from watching this Phillies Astros series? And in your opinion, is Philadelphia entering a window where we could see them in the playoffs more often? Or was this kind of they squeaked in and just got hot at the right time, and who knows how next season goes for them?
I think they're definitely a team that's going to continue to have success moving forward. I mean, obviously free agency will, dictate some of that. But I definitely think that they were hot this offseason. I think they surprised a lot of people. And I think basically Houston was what people expected them to be. I mean, I think they're getting close to dynasty status. I mean, they're a really good team, year in and year out. I mean, you lose players like George Springer and Carlos Correa, and you're still a good team. And I think it's just a credit to the front office and how they've built their team altogether, from player development, drafting, free agency, trades. They've done a really good job building a power team in a time where there's a lot more parity in baseball. And I think it ended the way I think a lot of people expected it to. But I think definitely Philadelphia showed up a little bit more than people expected them to.
I would say you hit the nail on the head with the depth of that organization, because, I mean, to lose Carlos Correa, one of their absolute superstars, and then to just be able to replace him with a literal World Series MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of organizations can make that happen. Yeah. So, much as you hate to do it, a tip of the cap to the Astros and what they're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy that they were able to replace such a franchise level shortstop that easily and got a World Series MVP out of it. It's definitely a credit to how they've built their organization.
Let's talk Jeremy Pena for a second here, because my goodness, what a playoffs that gentleman had. Rookie shortstop, ALCS MVP, World Series MVP. And it was funny. I was on the road this weekend. I'm a stand-up comic, so we were doing some shows, and I ran into a few Jays fans. And one of them mentioned, why can't our young core perform in the playoffs like this? Now, Jeremy Pena is a rookie, but 25 years old, right? A little bit more mature, not necessarily the reason for his success. Do you think it's unfair to compare this Jays core with Pena, or should more criticism be on this Jays young core to step up in big moments?
I mean, obviously they've been in the playoffs a couple of times. You would like to see them make a little more push, a little more development in that area. I mean, obviously I don't think it's really fair to compare them to any player. I mean, they're each their own individual. But Jeremy Pena definitely stepped up, and it'd be nice to see Bo Bichette get those clutch hits in the playoffs like he always does in the regular season. He got hot right before the playoffs, so it'd be cool to see him, kind of carry that push into the playoffs as well.
It's interesting, that wild card series, because even watching that 7-game series with the World Series, right? You get down 2-1. I mean, in the wild card, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you watch the Astros come back and win 3 in a row and realize how different the dichotomy of those two series truly are, and how important it maybe is to win the division, right?
But yeah, it really is important to, you give yourself a better opportunity, more, better chance to, if you get down early, you have more time to come back and not just be like, well, you're down and then the series ends.
Mm-hmm. One of my major takeaways from this World Series, and I don't know how you felt about it, but the thing that stood out to me was the gas both bullpens contained. I mean, the Astros alone had 5 guys in that pen that hit triple digits.
Yeah.
Right. You watched Jose Alvarez and Dominguez come out and they're touching 101, 102, 103. I mean, my goodness. And we talked about this, Adam and I, a little bit last week, that in 2008, when they first started to keep track of what every pitch was doing, in that 2008 playoffs, there were 3 pitches thrown that hit 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
This playoffs, it pushed 300 that were thrown. Where are you at on velo? Like, what is your opinion of it? Is it overvalued, or is it absolutely necessary? Or am I giving you just 2 options and there's a gray area here?
I think there's definitely value to it. You do definitely have to locate your pitches as well. Velo is great, but if you can't hit the strike zone, it doesn't really help you. But yeah, I think it's definitely a bigger part in the game now. You definitely see more teams with power arms in the bullpen, guys that constantly hit high 90s, low 100s, and I feel like that is an area that the game has evolved in. Like, you don't see as many guys coming in just picking the corners. There are guys coming in and gassing people for an inning. And so I definitely feel like it has a place in the game, and it definitely feels like the game is moving in that direction.
So my question for you then, Brian, is that this Toronto Blue Jays organization has Yosfer Zulueta, Nate Pearson, and TJ Brock in the minor league system hitting triple digits.
Yeah.
That's it. Is this a deficiency within the Jays organization? Is this something that needs to be addressed? I mean, outside Jordan Romano, who does touch 100 as well.
Right. It's definitely something I don't feel like there's a whole lot of players that can hit 100 in the minors for them. So it might be a little bit of a deficiency. There's definitely a lot of good pitchers coming up in the system. I don't, if their long-term goal is for some of them to be starters or long relievers or back of the bullpen guys, that's yet to be seen. But, it's definitely a deficiency within the organization. Not too many guys are throwing with that much gas.
Now, you've got your hand on the pulse there, and I know you just mentioned that they do have some very good pitching coming up the ranks here. And I know last year, one of the biggest problems with this organization was that they did have a lot of good pitchers coming up the ranks, but nothing at that high level, right? Nothing at that AAA level where when someone got injured on the roster, they could bring them up. Like they were kind of rolling with guys like Casey Lawrence and Max Castillo rather than, some of these other teams that we've watched bring up actual prospects that possibly could contribute long-term to the team. Now that another year has gone by, we're getting a little closer, right? To having that insular depth, to having that AAA depth. Where are we at on the pitching depth in this organization? And are there some names that maybe Jays fans should be paying attention to?
I feel like it's the depth will be getting a step closer. Obviously, Ricky Tiedeman's a big one. People are high on. He will probably continue to make a big push next year. He'd probably be in AAA at some point. I don't know if he'll make his debut next year or in 24. There's definitely obviously Sam Bose is a big one. People, he'll probably be in AAA next year, and obviously they're probably more starters long term. And then obviously you have some bullpen guys in Buffalo like Brandon Iser who might come up and be in the bullpen for Toronto next year. So there's a few guys that are really close. Obviously some are a little further down in like A-ball.
I think Blue Jays fans have almost put his name out of their head because there's been so much hype and excitement around him over the last couple of years, and it just seems like injuries and just literally bad luck has stood in his way. Nate Pearson, could he contribute next year? Or is it best for us to not try and like decide what he could do and just let him surprise us?
Yeah, I think he could contribute next year. Obviously, health is always a concern. But if he's healthy and he has a good spring training, he definitely could contribute next year.
Do you think this is something that the organization is looking to him to do, or are they almost of the mindset at this point, do you think, where let him force the situation?
They might be to that point. I think they're leaning for him to be a major leaguer. I think they want him to be in the bullpen at least, if not.
Because those number one draft picks, like they get opportunities. Like, he's not at the end of his rope, right?
No, yeah, the first round picks definitely get a lot of opportunities. He's not at the end of his ropes. They're still going to give him plenty of time to develop and try to get him to where they feel he's the player they felt he was when they drafted him.
Mm-hmm. So free agency starts in just a few days. It's pretty exciting. Like, honestly, it's pretty exciting. I know rumors are starting to pop up here. I know just last night it was announced Edwin Diaz, the best reliever set to hit free agency, will avoid that, as the Mets are bucking up big time here for him. 5 years, $102 million, making him the highest paid reliever in MLB history.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that deal? That's a lot of money to give to a reliever, but also Diaz at 29 years old, who is one of the best in the game. If there's anyone to get paid that much, he's probably the right guy, eh?
Yeah. A lot of people, I think, undervalue bullpen pitching, but it's very important. And if you can lock up one of the best guys out there, yeah, absolutely do it. They're able to get him long-term. He's definitely one of the best relievers in the game. So I think it makes sense for them to go after him and offer him that kind of contract.
Well, it was kind of funny because Adam and I were talking before the World Series ended here, just our most wanted guy on the free agent market, right? If we each could just pick one guy and play general manager, and I had chosen Edwin Diaz. I just love the way he pitches. I love how dominant he is, and I could just envision what a boost it would be to the Blue Jays bullpen to see a guy like that come in. With that said, Robert Suarez of the San Diego Padres just opted out of his contract and is now going to hit free agency. And with Diaz being locked up, he becomes one of the top options out there. Do you think this is a guy where his splits are great? There's almost no difference between righties and lefties with him. Yeah. He's got that 102 mile an hour arm. Is this a dude the Jays should be pursuing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously they had an issue with the split in the playoffs. They brought Mesa in at the wrong time. Obviously like you've mentioned, there's a lack of velo in their bullpen. So I think that would definitely be a good target for them to kind of, maybe make a push in the playoffs, get a guy that you can use in pretty much any situation. A guy that can obviously, his splits between lefties and righties are pretty comparable. He's got the velo. He's got everything they really kind of needed the last couple of years.
So to pursue Suarez, do you think this is going to take a little bit of a shift in the way this front office views the bullpen? Because if you look at the money they're investing into the pen, it is, I think it was 14th out of 30 teams and substantially less than those top, 6-7 teams. Jimmy Garcia being the highest paid guy in the pen at $5.5 million next year. And obviously to go out and get a guy like Suarez, it's going to take some money. Do you think that they have that within them to go spend that kind of money? Or do you think they have already made up their mind of what a pen arm is worth?
I think the fact that their lineup, like their core, is pretty much locked up next year. I think obviously they can see that the bullpen is an area of need. So I would like to think that they would go after and be like, we need to lock up a bigger name in the bullpen. a guy that can come in and, support they had a pretty good rotation this year.
Yeah, they do.
Manoa was really good. Gosman was really good. Jose Barrios was a little up and down.
Yeah.
But, as a whole, they have a good rotation. They need basically some guys to support them. And I think, I feel like they want, I feel like the front office wants to contend. So I could see them going after a big name free agent in the bullpen.
The argument is always with these big arms, right? Where you need to spend money like that, is that you're paying for 60 innings.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, once you get to the playoffs, these guys are paramount. It's almost like, yeah, maybe you're overpaying during the regular season, but they also become the most important part of a team come the most important times being played, right?
Right.
And I know that organizationally they've been bitten before. The Jays went out and spent big money on BJ Ryan back in the JP Ricciardi days. Do you think that $15 million a year, or even let's say a Yusei Kikuchi type deal where they're going out and spending $36 million over 3 years on a bullpen arm, there is value to that if you get the right guy, right?
Absolutely. Every team wants to win. And if you can get a guy that can, handle those high leverage situations in the playoffs, it's worth the money. And I feel like that is an area where they're really lacking right now. And that's an area I feel like should be addressed this free agency, this offseason. It really comes down to pitching.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all speculation here, but I'm curious what you think about if Edwin Diaz is getting $102 million over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Starting pitching, we've already seen, is where front offices value the most and are prepared to put the most money into. Do you have any guess? What would you guess Jacob deGrom gets signed for?
And
do you think a team is more likely to go crazy high, like AAV, and try and go shorter, like maybe do a 4 or 5 year contract where they're like, here's $200 million? Or do you think we see them try and, or even out of curiosity, what you think on the deGrom camp, if they want to be locked up for, let's say, 10 years and they're after term?
Mm-hmm. I would think probably more a short-term deal. I think you're seeing more of those in the game. Players signing for like 3-4 years at top value.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of not as many players are going term. It doesn't seem like as many want like a 10-year deal. They want to have the option open for whatever they want to do in the future.
So, speculation time on your part. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, and there are some real areas of need within this Blue Jays roster, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. So, when you look at this team, you don't even need to necessarily say names you want to see them target, but just areas that you feel they should be addressed. And even if there's some thoughts that maybe others haven't mentioned, where you're like, I don't know why no one's talking about this. What are your thoughts on what this Blue Jays team needs to do to take another step forward in 2023?
I feel like they could, maybe use another starter in free agency, whether they get like a number 4, number 5 starter, a little more consistency at the back end of the rotation. And definitely I feel like they need to get a couple bullpen arms, whether that be through free agency, trades. Obviously, I don't really know how much they're looking to spend this free agency. If they're even considering, trading one of their catchers or trading one of your key guys from the infield or the outfield. The lineup is great. So obviously, I feel like they're going to definitely look at pitching, whether they try to add a starter or two or add a couple of relievers. I definitely feel like they need to address the bullpen a little bit more.
Yeah. Thoughts on getting Springer out of center field? Are you okay with him taking the reins at center for at least another season?
I feel like for his health's sake, they should try to move him a little bit more to right field, just so he's not putting so much strain on his body. I don't like the idea of him necessarily being a full-time DH because that kind of limits opportunities for other people to get in there. I definitely feel like he needs to play in the outfield a little bit, especially for the amount of his contract. But I definitely see him maybe moving over to right field more, and other players can go in the center. You have
Probably more time for Merrifield in center field, I guess.
I would say so. And there's definitely, they definitely have more options there. So I definitely could see him moving over to right field some. If they want him to occasionally play in center, they could definitely do that. But I don't know if it's the best place for him for a full season.
Yeah, especially after this season and watching or the last two seasons and him struggle with his health. I think the more time on the field George Springer can play with this team, the better, right?
Right, yeah.
So we talked rookie shortstop Jeremy Pena, rookie shortstop with the Phillies, Bryson Stott, also a big contributor and really shored up that position defensively for them. And it's really interesting to watch some of these playoffs teams because depth was a major contributor on the teams that went the furthest, right? They had guys from within their organization come up, play on the big league team, and contribute.
Yes.
Do the Blue Jays have anyone in the system that we could truly see contribute in a significant way come 2023?
From like a lineup standpoint,
wherever. I mean, I know it's a real listen. We're all aware Ricky Tiedemann is the shining star of this prospect pool. And you kind of touched on it, right? He's probably going to continue to push the issue. He'll probably get some AAA time, and maybe he does make his major league debut next year, but he's 20. So let's reel it in just a little bit. So let's take him out of that scenario. Is there anyone like a Spencer Horwitz or a whatever type of guy, an Addison Barger, whoever it may be that may come up the ranks and
really
surprise some of us? Yes.
I think Addison Barger is probably the first one that comes to mind. Yeah, he's definitely, hit well at every level this year. He definitely surprised a lot of people. He has a lot of power. He has a strong work ethic. He's definitely one that I would think could definitely contribute next year. You mentioned Spencer Horwitz. He's obviously one that could definitely come up. I mean, defensively, he mostly just plays first base, so he's a little more limited though. I mean, he's not going to take too much time away from Vladdy.
Yeah. It's the Rowdy Tellez scenario all over again, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those two definitely stand out. Tanner Morris is a guy who maybe could come up and, he's a versatile infielder that can hit. But there's definitely a few. From the outfield standpoint, I think it's a little more thin in the outfield. But there's definitely some infielders that are making some pushes.
As for pitching, we're still waiting on Roberts probably another year too, eh?
I would say so.
Yeah.
He's probably about a year away. I would say Tiedemann's a year away. When that they're young and the development's there, they're moving in the right direction, but you also don't want to push them too far, too fast and mess up their development either. And so, there's a little bit more where you're kind of just waiting for them. And this offseason, I think the Blue Jays definitely will be trying to address some free agency, for the bullpen, for the starters. They don't have to necessarily push those guys so quickly.
Let's dive a little deeper. you've kind of got your hand on the pulse of like what's happening throughout the system. Who are some guys we won't see next year, but we should probably still know their names as they are developing quickly and we could see them contribute down the road to this team?
Definitely, you've talked to Davis Snyder. He's definitely moving in that direction. Like I've mentioned Brandon Isaac, he's moving in that direction. Addison Bojo, Spencer Horwitz, like I said, Tanner Morris is moving in that direction. Yeah. If we move a little further down, in Dunedin, obviously there's like Josh Casebit, who they just drafted, Cade Doughty. There's definitely players all the way through the system that made some noise this year.
Cade Doughty is in Vancouver now, correct?
I think he finished in Dunedin. He'll probably be in Vancouver next year.
Yeah. And he's second base, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right on. So universal DH and expanded playoffs came in at the start of the season here. I think it's safe to say the team that benefited the most from these rule changes, the Philadelphia Phillies, right? Able to move Bryce Harper to that DH position full time and just squeak into the playoffs and look at them go all the way to the World Series. So I'm really curious what you think looking at these rule changes that are going to happen next year, right? Bigger bases, pitch clock, no shift. Will this change the way teams approach free agency and roster construction? And do teams even know what the consequences of these rule changes truly could be down the road?
Obviously they've implemented some in the minors, so some of the organizations do know how that works. It's as far as the free agent rules, I don't know if they're going to have long-term effects or not. They might limit like some long-term contracts, or they might even encourage teams to lock guys up longer. If players are becoming free agents sooner, they might want to lock up certain players longer. And so I think a lot of that is, it's kind of going to be kind of wait and see. I'm not really sure how front offices are going to handle some of the changes that's happening. It's the universal DH, I think, definitely benefited, certain teams. Obviously, Bryce Harper definitely benefited from that rule change. So it's kind of a wait and see with a lot of that stuff.
I think lefties that hit into the shift may see the most fruit from these rule changes, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that it is worth taking a shot and a chance on some of these lefty guys that maybe were fringe dudes, like the Joey Gallows types that just had awful seasons, that now that teams need to really be careful of where they're positioning everybody may see more success? Is that something that's probably safe to say? Or do you think the shift ban is going to actually affect things less than everyone thinks it is?
It's definitely something to consider. I can see teams taking shots on some lefty guys who can maybe have a little more value now that there's changes with how you can do the shift. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. I can see teams, taking shots on players and seeing if it works out, if it, something that can definitely, push their career back in the right direction.
Jay's budget was 11th overall in 2022. Do you think that it has to be increased to see more success?
That's possibly. Yeah,
I know. I'm kind of asking you to look into a crystal ball here, but
they spend a lot of money, but obviously the teams that have the most success are the ones that spend a lot of money, and definitely if they address a couple extra pitchers, I could see their budget going up, and hopefully that would generate more success for them.
Brian, Did you have anything that you wanted to touch on here quickly before we wrap this up? We really appreciate you taking the time to join us, my man. I always have so much interest in what's going on in the minor league system, and it's so nice to talk to guys who follow it, who are in it, you know,
Right.
who are there and able to like give names. And you know, there's so many guys within an organization, and it's tough to pay attention to them all. So we do appreciate your insight and your knowledge there. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up?
I think a lot of it is, you know, it's cool to just kind of, you know, hear those stories, you know, and find out, like, you know, be able to just hear how they've adjusted and changed as players. When I talked to Addison Boju, you know, he talked about that he got an iPitch machine last offseason, and he feels like that's what really helped him this season to hit better, because he was able to take live at bats in the offseason and put like pitchers data in, and it was something that he wasn't able to do a lot in previous off seasons. And you know, so it's really cool to kind of hear that kind of stuff, and you know, be able to write about it, and you know, just really understand, you know, just how much work these guys are putting in.
It's pretty eye-opening, isn't it? When you start to actually talk to them and realize what a grind that minor league system is, and just the amount of work. And what always amazes me too is the mental focus they have on what they're trying to accomplish. You know, that was one thing that kind of stood out when we sat down with Davis Schneider, was just realizing here's this kid who has been in the system since 18. He's 23 now. And for the first time is starting to notice some true success, some real steps forward, and just how determined you have to be to continue to go while you're plateauing for years, right?
Yeah, it's just how mentally tough you'd have to be, you know, to, you know, have some down seasons, but continue to get back up and keep, you know, developing and, you know, pushing in the right direction. Obviously, the players that come out of high school, I think it takes them a little bit longer to develop, just because it's a much bigger talent jump for them.
Yeah.
But just, I can't even imagine, you know, basically coming out of high school and, you know, you go in the pro ball and you went from being like a star in high school, and then they get in the pro ball and they struggle. And just how mentally tough they have to be to, you know, work through all that and, you know, continue to have success. And yeah, he's definitely one that has, you know, he's pushed through it. I mean, he had struggles earlier in his career, and 5 years later, you know, he moved up. He's hitting for average. He's hitting for power. He's stealing bases. He's basically doing everything you want to see a player do, and he has defensive versatility. And you know, he's definitely somebody that, you know, all of a sudden he's a player that the organization's watching. He's a guy who could maybe even get up and make his debut next year. So yeah, it's definitely cool to see that.
It is impressive because development's not linear, and the mental toughness it takes to deal with those ups and downs is impressive. And I know we've been very lucky here to have, dozens and dozens of the minor league guys within the J system come on the show, but we really appreciate your time, Brian. We really appreciate you coming on and talking baseball with us, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome. Right on. Thanks again, buddy. Take care of yourself.
Take care.
Cheers. We really appreciate all of you within the walk-off community. This thing continues to grow and become an animal of its own. It's a little bit overwhelming, but honestly, we love talking Blue Jays baseball and all the interaction that you folks are involved with us. Thank you so much. Discord, feel free to join it. That is always free. The show, or the link is in the show notes. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube currently and you're not subscribed, we'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. All the best, everybody. Cheers.